I'd like to call the city council meeting to order this December 2nd, 2015. Everybody please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everybody tonight. There's a few corrections to the agenda. Under item number 4, we're adding the police report, if that's all right, for item B. And then going down to item 5, we're gonna take out item item E and item F. And then if you turn to the back page, we're gonna add on council action, we're gonna add an item B, which is resolution 184-15, Corey Trail support letter. And I believe those are all our corrections at this time.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Otherwise, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Approval of meeting minutes for November 4th and November 19th. Is there any questions or comments or inquiries?
Seeing no corrections, I make a motion to approve them as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Moving down to item 4, approval of bills to be paid. Is there any bills or questions on them?
I'll make a motion to approve the approval of bills paid.
I do have one question though, before we approve that. In with the Carlson Stewart refrigeration out of the ice arena for that furnace. That furnace was fairly new and we already needed repairs for a leak that was going on with that. Did Kevin look into that as a warranted item at all? That possibly could have been covered underneath a warranty?
The one we just replaced?
This was repairing, furnace leaking repair on the Rexnar.
How much?
Was $328.
I believe that's in relationship to the one we replaced. They came out to fix it, and then later we replaced it.
Oh, is that what that
I
is?
think it is.
Oh, okay. Well, it just says
That's an
leaking.
old
It was just a
furnace.
leaking. That's the old one?
That's the old one.
Okay.
It was
Not one of the
originally-
newer ones that we've replaced recently. Okay. All right. No, then that's fine. That was my only question I had.
Second motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Move on to item B, police report for this evening. Mr. Bloom?
Good evening, and I think you guys all have a copy of it. The report that Chris made up. Okay. Just to go over the numbers, we're up to September right now for the stuff that's entered. For Richmond, in September we had 81 total incidents for the month. 6 medicals, 5 suspicious people or vehicles, and then 4 open doors that were found while pulling on doors or doing door checks in the evening. 38 total traffic stops with 31 warnings and 18 citations, and then 28 miscellaneous calls for police-related incidents. There was no alcohol-related incidents in Richmond in September, which is a good thing. And then from January through September this year, we have a total of 784 incidents, which is up from last year, which was 664 incidents. And kind of seeing that trend through all the areas that we cover, all our numbers are kind of up this year. I don't know why that is, but it has been a busier year for some reason. Couple things that have happened recently that are kind of the bigger things. On November 23rd, from Richmond here, we recovered a lady's wedding ring that was valued at $10,000. We do know who the suspect is. We have been talking with them, and I foresee charges coming at some point, but we did get her wedding ring back for her, so she was pretty excited about that. And then I know Spoden was coming. He was on his way over here. He's on duty right now. I was going to introduce him and Chad. On the first of the year, Chad, Spoden is going to be moving to, he applied for and got the position for a float/investigator position to kind of help out So all our investigations, like the one with the ring, we had 3 or 4 different officers that put a lot of hours into it. It'd be nice to have one lead officer, and if he needs help, so that's where we're kind of adding that investigator spot, and then he can kind of cover other shifts if he's not working investigations, and kind of cut down on some of the part-time use, get an experienced full-timer in there. And he actually got a call while he was on his way over here. He's actually working right now. So, and then to fill Jason's spot, Chad on the first of the year will be the newest full-timer, which I'm sure you guys all know. Can you come up, say hi?
Yeah, because we don't know you. What's your first name? Wait, you never
Jason.
introduced yourself. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I apologize. Sergeant Jason Bloom with the Cold Spring Richmond Police Department.
Okay, thank you.
Speaking of,
There he is. So, and then like I said, Officer Jason Spoden, he's going to be the new full float investigator spot as of the first of the year. So.
Okay.
A little closer to that camera.
Might not see Jason very often. He's working nights, and Chad is part-time right now, so it's kind of hit or miss if he's working or not. But come the first of the year, should start seeing more of these guys.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, guys.
And then also, starting last Tuesday, we got the approval to add a second canine to our canine program, and we're going to start, we've been working on trying to get donations towards the purchase of the canine. Hopefully get an officer with the dog in training next spring sometime is what we're hoping for, and we'll see how things go over the next couple of months. So just kind of putting the word out there. If anybody would like to donate, I'm sure I'll get a flyer up here at City Hall. Any donations are greatly appreciated and be accepted at the City of Cold Spring, or I'm sure you could drop them off here and get them over there. So just putting the word out there. So any questions or anything?
Any estimated cost on the new dog?
The dog itself is $8,500, and then the narcotic and training is roughly $500. The total cost is going to be $13,500 for the dog and all the training. Is what we're hoping to get, and then a little bit extra because we do need more equipment, agility equipment, a bite suit, because the dog will be trained. Riley's trained for passive tracking, lost kids, vulnerable adults, that kind of stuff. The new dog, there was some issues where me and Riley were out tracking the individual over in Painesville. I'm sure you all heard about it. Was running from the BCA. We went over there and actually tracked him. He had made threats towards law enforcement where Riley tracked, and he did a great job, but we tracked him up, found his footprints on the river where he had jumped into the river, couldn't follow him downriver, that kind of stuff. If we would have caught up to him, Riley isn't trained to apprehend, protect himself, anything like that. So if he would have started fighting with us, he's not trained to do that kind of stuff. We don't want him to do that stuff because we want him to go find kids and that kind of stuff. So the new dog would be trained in apprehension, so to protect himself, to protect the officer, for tracking violent offenders, known criminals, that kind of stuff is what that dog would be used for.
Do you know who's stepping up to be the new handler?
That hasn't been decided yet. I know there's a couple people that were interested when we got Riley, so the decision hasn't been made yet, so we don't know yet. Or I can't, it's still up in the air yet.
okay. Anybody else have any questions, comments? Thanks for.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Congratulations, Chad.
Yes.
And Jason.
Congratulations to Chad and Jason.
Thank you, guys.
All right, at this time, we'll move on to the consent agenda for this evening. Resolution 178-15, approval of November journal entries. Item B, Resolution 179-15, acceptance of November 2015 donations. Item C is Resolution 180-15, approval of tax exempt gambling permit for Midwest Outdoors Unlimited on January 28, 2016 at Halfleys. And item D is acknowledgement of People Services November 2015 written report. Anybody have any questions? If not, I'd look for a motion.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. At this time, we'll move on to the 2016 budget, the public comments. I will open this back up to Marty, I guess.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I did provide you the summary report that I've been working on. Nothing has changed since the last several meetings. You're showing a balanced budget. The levy is staying the same. It's 614,000. How much?
14,134.
And
Yeah,
so
1614-134.
if there's no public comment, then your action is to approve the resolution.
And this is the same as last year, correct?
That is true.
Anybody have any comments? I don't see any from the public. Any other questions, or would you like to move on?
Do we need a motion to accept this evening, or since we're not changing it, it was approved the last time, or?
Need a move.
Make a motion to approve the levy for 614,134, keeping the levy the same for 2016 it was in 2015.
I'll second.
It's actually resolution 181-15 is what we're approving.
181-15.
Is what we're approving. We have a motion and a second. Any comments? Otherwise, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. At this time, we'll move on to PFA, wastewater treatment refinancing with David Drone. So if you would like to.
As I told Marty, I brought an embarrassingly large amount of paper tonight. I apologize for that, but it's a fair amount of information I kind of want to walk council through. So I'll pass these around.
Oh, thanks.
Can I just have a second, Dave? For those of you watching, David Drown is our financial, I want to say expert. He's kind of helps the city through some of the financing of certain of the items, like the wastewater treatment plant. You know, as most of you know, the waste treatment plant was put in place with certain things to finance it, and when those things don't happen, sometimes you need to refinance or change how things are being done, and that's what we're talking about tonight. So just for an understanding for people watching, what the process, what we're going through. I'll turn it back
Great,
over to you.
thank you. That's exactly right. Every couple of years, I end up coming to a meeting like this, and we talk a little bit about how things are going. And my typical comments on the wastewater plant and the financing associated with that is, boy, the development that we expected to come online in new homes aren't materializing, and that's ultimately going to pose a problem for us. But positive things generally happen, and we usually say no actions required right now, but we're going to watch this, and in a while we're going to have to come to the point in time where we figure out how to deal with this. Bottom line of this discussion is I think we're kind of at that point right now. Marty and I were in St. Paul last week, meeting informally with the PFA staff about potentially restructuring the debt associated with the project. I'd say the response we got was positive, but the walking orders were for us to develop a specific proposal that we would bring to the PFA, telling them what we want them to do associated with our debt, why it's necessary, and to make darn sure that there's great evidence that the council is fully supportive of this. So that's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to start out with the first page of the handout. This is an excerpt of stuff that I pulled out of the city's audited financial statements over the last 5 years. I know it's numbers, but it's fairly simple. On the top is simply a summary of annual revenues. Most of the revenue in the sewer business comes from sewer bills. You know, we send them out every 2 months, okay? And if you look at the revenues year by year, it's remarkably stable. We haven't changed our rate structure over this period of time, okay? And consumption seems to be pretty darn stable in the community. So we always generate something in the range of $275,000, $280,000 of revenue. Connection charges, that depends on the new home development in the community. I think 2010 is probably when Southside connected, and we got a slug of revenue there. Other than that, a typical year might see a couple of homes and the connection charges associated with that, and a little miscellaneous revenue that bumps up and down. But revenue-wise, over the last 5 years, things have been remarkably stable. You know, I usually see larger fluctuations in this. So that is what it is. Expenses, We got expenses associated with our people, and you see what you would expect, a little inflationary increase each year. We hire folks to help us manage our wastewater plant, and we see those costs, as you'd expect, go up year by year. And other expenses stay fairly stable. So generally we see our expenses are increasing a little here. If you compare the revenues we collect to our operating costs, we sort of how much money is left over. And except for 2010 when we got a bunch of connection charges, our operating profits, if I can use that term, since we haven't increased rates, predictably decline each year, simply due to the fact that costs go up a little bit. Now that's the money that's left over before we make our debt payments. Now the Public Facilities Authority debt is the big bond issue, was close to $9 million that funded the wastewater plant a decade ago. Okay, it has fairly large payments, averaging just a little about $375,000 in that magnitude. You will remember that we did a big assessment for everybody in town. Was assessed a little under $5,000 per connection, and for folks that didn't prepay, those revenues come in annually. And that handles a good chunk of that PFA debt, but not all of it. And the balance is expected to come from sewer revenues. Our profits aren't sufficient to do that. And if you look at the second to the bottom, or second to the bottom line, this would be the net operating profit or loss for the whole utility business. And you see that in most years it's a little bit negative. And that negative trend is starting to continue. My best guess for 2015, when we run the numbers for this year, we'll be looking at accumulated losses getting pretty close to $200,000. The main reason for that, why now and not before, a lot of the assessments have been prepaid. We expected to get $160,000 a year in assessment, principal, and interest payments, okay, if everybody paid their assessments over time. A lot of folks have chosen to prepay. So we've enjoyed more assessment revenue in the early years. That's helped our cash flow look pretty good, okay? That also means that assessment revenue in the future is not going to be $160,000 a year. We've pre-collected a lot of that dollars. It's going to be closer to $100,000. And we're going to probably started to see that trend in 2015, and it's going to continue, okay? Now, a lot of this was somewhat predicted. We knew going into the wastewater plant that a lot of the costs were built for capacity for the community to grow. Okay, back in the early part of the last decade, this community was growing at 4 or 5% a year. Okay, 20-some homes a year was the construction in the first half of the last decade, and the folks that sized the plant expected that trend to continue. Every community around St. Cloud experienced similar situations. So when that growth didn't materialize right away, a lot of that was expected. And we had a fair amount of cash sitting on the side that were expected to cover those operating losses. But over time, as the community grew, we had connection fee and we had larger customer base, we would expect our revenues to grow. Nobody's anticipated the economic downturn. Nobody anticipated the housing development would stop. It did, and we've been depleting our cash. We're getting close to that point in time where we're going to have to do something about that. Go to the second page. I told you that we have PFA debt payments outstanding, and we do. So we're about half paid off with that thing. It was a 20-year deal. We're about halfway through a 20-year payoff cycle. Our payments historically have been $375 to $390,000, something in that magnitude. The way that debt was structured, and I can't tell you why because I didn't necessarily do it, but it was structured that in 2017, those payments jump up about $120,000 a year or something, okay? So we've been losing money in our sewer business making the lower payments. In a year when those payments start to jump up, if we don't do something, we're going to be losing money at quite a bit higher rate. Okay, that's going to be a larger concern. Mm-hmm. Right. It's the reason, and Marty and I went down and talked to PFA saying, You know, it would really help a lot if we'd renegotiate and extend the term of our financing to provide a little more time for development to happen and lower our payments. And what we ran by them was the payment schedule that's shown on the right side of this page, where we look at stretching the payments out over another 10 years, lowering them in the bid in the early years, and then as assessments are paid off, we lose our assessment revenue, it drops down a little more. That was our suggestion to them, and again, they said, give us the rationale for why that makes sense. Which brings me to page 3, which is a lot like the first page, where we looked at audited information. This is my guess of how the numbers will need to look moving forward as we make projections moving forward, okay? Basically, the only assumptions here is that expenses inflate at an annual rate of 3%. It's probably the only real assumption. And the assumption that we continue to only get 2 or 3 new homes a year. 3 new homes a year. If that continues on, the future of the sewer business will probably look something like this. The bad news is that we are quickly running out of cash in the sewer business. Absent some other change, we need to identify a significant amount of new revenue, and that needs to happen fairly quickly. If that new revenue to balance things out is going to be sewer rates and charges and sewer revenues, we're looking at a need to, in the fairly quick future, to increase sewer revenues by about 110%. That means more than doubling them, okay? So if something doesn't change, we got to double our sewer bills, okay? And quite candidly, our rationale to the PFA is having to double sewer bills is going to be really tough. We would like you to extend the term of the financing to make that a little more palatable and easier to handle. If they agree to that and do what we ask, the future will look a little bit more like the final page, where we raise rates and charges, but it won't have to be 110%. It's going to have to be a number in the magnitude of 50% higher than they are now, okay? That should generate the extra revenue that we need to stabilize cash flow in our sewer business, leave enough cash in the bank that we, prudently have some flexibility, and get fairly close to a break-even operation. That's the heavy-duty number part. Any questions on that? You can quibble a bit with the projections, but these are in the right magnitude, okay? It's just that we reach that point in time where if we don't do anything, we're going to start to get too far behind. The cash reserves in our sewer account are going to go away, and then we're going to have a significant problem. So we need to take some action now. Part of what we want to do is let the PFA extend our loan terms and lower payments a bit. It really cuts our problem in half in terms of what we need to do in terms of raising rates.
Makes sense.
You said you had a term you used, favorable discussion with PFA.
Yeah, I thought it went pretty well.
Do you feel, have you worked with these folks before? I presume you have. And with that experience, do you feel that this is not out of line, that what we're doing with them?
No, I don't think so. If you turn the clock back a couple of years ago, you're not the only community that's in this situation. There are many communities around St. Cloud that have a similar situation to yours. Avon, City of Avon was one of them. We had a similar problem there. We went to the PFA, made the case for development isn't happening, we have extra capacity, we need some relief, and they approved a loan extension. If they did it there, quite candidly, I'll expect they'll do it here.
Right.
Okay.
Did they do it for the same period of time?
It was similar, yes. Their numbers are slightly different, but what they approved was an extension of the term so payments were lower, and they didn't increase the interest rate. Both of which they're telling us they'll probably do here.
Okay, and just to clarify for people that are watching this, the interest rate we're paying at the present time is 1%.
1%, yep. And I know one of the concerns we had is we're not interested in this if you turn that into 3, And they ran the numbers by their technical folks, and they said with 99% probability, it will stay at 1%. So I feel pretty good about that.
Along with that, I have to address our city administrator. Was it PFA that washed $1 million note last year, or within the last year and a half, for sure? So again, for the citizens out there, that PFA definitely wants to work with us and makes no burden, but we have to come to the plate with something too.
I think that's right.
Okay.
We don't need to make decisions like this tonight, but it would take a look at, if we're looking at increasing the revenues of our sewer business by 50%, how might that be accomplished? Is that okay if I do this? Yeah, okay.
Those don't have much on them.
Okay. At the upper part of this sheet, we see the city's current sewer billing formula or formulation, okay? We have a base fee. It's actually billed every 2 months, but on a monthly base, it's $14.50. So $29 every 2 months.
$14.50 every 2 months.
Sorry, $14.50 every 2 months. That's what it says too. Sorry, $14.50 every 2 months, or about $7 a month. Okay. So if you have a sewer account, even if you don't generate any sewage, your sewer bill will be at least $7.25 on a monthly basis, or twice that bi-monthly. In addition, for whatever water you consume, presumably during the summer months, I imagine, we base our sewer bill on a volume basis at currently $8.58 per 1,000 gallons. So in the first column, if you're a typical residential user with a couple of kids, you probably use about 5,000 gallons of water a month. Your sewer bill on a monthly basis should be pretty darn close to $50. If you look at all of the revenues that rates and charge structure generates annually across the whole system, about 53 grand of that should come from the base charge. $7.25 a month times the number of utility accounts you have times the number of months in a year gives us 53 grand. The remainder has to be volume or usage, and you see how that breaks down there, and it generates historically, pretty close to 275 grand a year. Okay, the number that we're looking to get to is 50% more than that so that target number there of about 412 grand that's the number we're looking at needing to meet. Okay, there are a couple of options to do that. One option, I'll bracket this with the extremes. We could simply leave the volumetric charge exactly as it is and raise the base charge to generate the extra revenue to hit our $412,000 a year target. And that would raise the bi-monthly base fee from the current $14.50 up to just under $52, or about $25.90 a month. If we do that, that increase in the base charge should get us pretty close to generating the revenue we need to fill the gap. Okay. The other option, option 2, is to take the other extreme, which is to leave the base charge exactly the way it is and increase the per 1,000 gallon charge to generate the extra dollars. And that number is going to have to go from $8.58 up to about $13.90, or about a 60% increase to make that number work. And option 3 simply says, okay, as some sort of intermediate solution, why don't we have the base rate for sewer be the same as the current base rate for water, which is $47. And that would mean the volumetric charge would go up a little bit, but more like 70 cents per thousand instead of a lot more. There are a million combinations between these two extremes. I don't know which one is right. You guys can think about it for a while, but something akin to some of these is what has to take place in our rates and charges system in order to generate the extra revenue. I will tell you that the dynamic of raising the base fee is entirely predictable, okay? If you raise it, the revenue will come in, okay, because it's independent of usage. If you raise the variable charge, what'll tend to happen is that people will notice the increase, be a little more conscious of their utility use, and you usually don't quite generate the revenue you expect because conservation takes place, all right? So there may be some fine-tuning of this that's necessary if we rely fairly heavily on the volumetric charge, okay? In any case, we'd be looking at typical sewer bills, up in the range of $70 a month for a typical family. If they're 50 now, they'll end up being in the magnitude of 70, okay? And industry will generate a little bit more. If you looked around at communities that send out sewer bills, $70 is on the high side, okay? I can show you communities that are well over 100, okay? But I can tell you that until anybody qualifies you for grant funding, those numbers are going to have to be up around $45 to $50 a month in order to get into the sort of the normal range. So if we raise them to 70, will put you in the higher side of normal, I suppose, would be a good way to put it. But by no means the top of the list, okay? For communities that have new wastewater projects like yours, seeing rates like this is fairly normal in a small community. Okay. Final handout. The PFA has a board meeting in December. They only meet twice a year, so if we don't meet their board meeting in December, we're going to be waiting until 6 months later till they have their next meeting. So we told them we'd work really hard to see if we could get our act together and put a formal request into them for assistance, okay? And what they wanted to see as a part of that package was evidence from the city council that you're committed to this, okay? So what I drafted up is a fairly simple resolution for the council's consideration that basically says in the whereases, we built a plant expecting new growth to pay for a lot of it. New growth didn't happen. We're starting to develop cash flow problems. We'd like the PFA to restructure our loan, lengthen the payments, so loan payments provide a better match toward the revenues that are available to us today. It commits the city, in terms of the resolution portion, it basically says the city seeks approval of the PFA to refund, restructure, and extend the term of the loan in a form substantially equal to an attachment. Basically what we just talked about is what that attachment looks like. And part 2 says the council hereby agrees to promptly implement sewer rate adjustments designed to increase sewer fees approximately 50% to an amount lot less than $412,000 a year, okay? And the council further agrees to annually review sewer revenues and expenses and periodically adjust rates as necessary to keep pace with inflation. So the PFA is looking for you to be serious about, if they extend the term of your loan, they want you to agree to do what's necessary to bring your utility business back to self-sufficiency and to watch it a little more closely moving forward. That would be my way of putting that in writing in the resolution, okay? To be able to move things along, we'd be looking for the council to pass something reasonably consistent with that, okay? The second part of this is merely my letter to the PFA, which outlines the problem in Peter Rabbit English, explains the history and the rationale for what we want them to do, and asks for them to approve it, okay? You can read this over. If there are any changes you'd like to see in that, communicate that to Marty, but I think this is relatively innocuous, okay? So, we certainly have reached that point in time when we've got to do a couple of things, okay? If we don't ask the PFA to restructure their loan, quite candidly, our problem gets twice as big because our payments get a lot higher than our available revenues. And we're looking at having to double revenues from somewhere. If PFA approves it, it cuts our problem in half, okay? And in the long run, I expect development and growth will return to the area and to Richmond, and we'll see some fee relief in the offing. But in the short run, we have to make a bump in sewer rates in order to meet this. I will say there is another way to do this, okay? In many respects, the sewer plant you built is an investment in the community in the future. It's an economic development investment, okay? And an alternative for the city is, instead of looking to the revenues of the sewer business to cover the shortfall, it's certainly a reasonable and a legal option to look at providing some property tax support. I'm not necessarily suggesting that, okay? But if some property tax use to reduce the required sewer rate increase made policy sense in this community, the council would be well within their rights and flexibility to do that. And as your financial advisor, there'd be nothing wrong with that. Either one of them is a community-wide revenue. And a great many people have funded wastewater plants with property tax support. It's not unusual at all. So as you fairly quickly debate exactly how you're going to implement this, that's a possibility for you. It's not a possibility for next year because you just set your tax rate, but it can help out in it. The other comment I will happen is I'd love to see you get this done right away, which means start of next year as quickly as, I don't know the process you need to go through to change your utility rates. Matt can comment on that, but the sooner you do it, I think the better. You still have the flexibility if you wanted to do this as a couple of phases. Do a piece this year and a piece next year. I don't think that'd kill you, okay? But it would further deplete your cash position. And my preference, if you ask me which I prefer, I just soon you get about it and do it in one fell swoop. It's going to be unpleasant anyhow. Nobody likes to pay for this stuff, okay? But it's a situation the city finds itself in, and the remedy you might as well get about solving it, okay? I'm fairly comfortable the PFA will do their part to help out, and we need to do our part. So with that, you can have some discussion. Ideally, I'd be looking for you to pass a resolution in something similar to this. If you want to change the wording or the amounts or the commitment, we can do that. But if you can come to an agreement on that this evening, PFA would love us to send an application packet into them tomorrow. By no means any later than Friday of this week. And that will put us on their agenda for action. Do you remember the date in September?
December 15th, I think it is.
15th? Okay. If they approve it, I would guess that we can get the new payments in place such that the payment that we make next on that loan, which is due in February of next year, will incorporate the new structure instead of the old.
Okay. Pat?
Couple questions. First of all, does PFA allow you to pay it off early?
Yes.
Okay. The reason why is if we would take on an additional 70 units and just using the 4,900 hookup fee type thing, figuring 5,000, that's 350,000, would it be in our best interest to take that money and pay off the principal?
It might be. The financial answer to that question would be, it depends on what interest rates look like. If interest rates bump up a couple of points, such that Marty's investments are yielding 3.5%, then I tell you, no, it would make no sense at all to prepay your loan. If you can borrow money at 1% and invest it at 3.5%, you don't want to pay it off, okay? You're making money on the spread. Right now, Marty's probably investing at 0.5 point or something like that. Would probably make sense if we had extra cash to pay off the debt and avoid it, okay?
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Anybody else have any other questions?
No. That's what it is.
Mr. Mayor and Council, this resolution is, it's 7B 183-15. You have the room to approve this resolution, and at a workshop, we can talk about if you want to use a combination of taxes, base fee increase,
Right.
user fee. But if we want to take advantage of increasing the loan, we have to commit to addressing the problem. And I feel comfortable in recommending that you approve the resolution.
Is everybody fine with using this format that we have in front of us that he delivered to us? I mean, obviously, like Marty explained, we can still change the numbers on how we want to get to that point. That doesn't have to be decided tonight. But ultimately, we're gonna have to get there somehow.
Well, the bottom line's gonna be there, no matter how we look at it.
Right.
Yeah.
And how we get there, that's gonna be creative at this table at the next meeting, I
Yeah,
presume.
it's gonna have to be.
So with that, I make a motion to approve it.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Marty will get you the paperwork that you need for tomorrow, or?
Great. And we'll stay on top of this and see if we can get it approved by the end of the year.
All right.
Keep you posted. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks a lot, David, for
You can't leave.
all your hard work, like always.
You gotta do the next one yet.
Oh, next one's easy. Fine. Next one's easy.
7A.
Okay. The reimbursement for the 2018 street project?
Okay, bond law is odd in many ways. And it's driven by the IRS, which is probably why it's odd. In the old days, if communities had small projects, you could just spend cash on them, and the next time you had a bond sale, you'd simply add that to the bond issue and replenish your cash. So it was a way to avoid little tiny bond issues. The feds changed the rules on that like 10, 15 years ago. And they basically said, if you've made a cash expenditure, if you don't issue debt within 2 months to reimburse that expenditure, we're not going to allow you to do that. Or at least they won't allow that debt to be tax exempt, okay? However, if you anticipate when you make the expenditure that at some reasonable later date, you're going to include it in a bond issue, and you memorialize that expectation in writing by resolution, basically saying, we're going to spend cash now, we plan to reimburse that cash with the proceeds of a tax-exempt bond later, then you get to do it, okay? So, we have a small sewer project coming up that logically might be included in a bond issue that we have at a later date. We'd like to make the expenditure now and use cash and keep the option open to reimburse that cash by including that small expenditure in a future bond issue. The way that we can legally do that is for the council to pass a reimbursement resolution. And it's an ugly little one drafted by bond counsel using their language. Basically, it allows what I just said and authorizes the city administrator to document the dollar amount and the intended internal sources. So to keep that option open for you, I'd recommend that you pass this reimbursement resolution that establishes the procedure for the city to do small cash expenditures and leave the options open to put things in a bond issue at a future date.
So the one that we have going right now, let's say for some reason next year something goes haywire or a different part of town and we have to spend another chunk of change on it, we can keep adding it all onto this.
You can at some point in time, you can't do it forever, okay? But the idea is it lets you do small expenditures, lump them together, and issue large bonds instead of 3 little ones. This gives you the ability to do that.
And that's with a GO bonding, right? We can't use PFA or rural development for that, right?
Same rules apply.
Oh,
If
it does.
it's tax exempt, you can't include it. Some of PFA stuff is tax exempt, some isn't, okay? But the vast majority of the funding sources you use, somewhere down in there somewhere, are tax exempt bonds, so this would affect your ability to do that. Pass a resolution. It doesn't do any harm and it keeps your options open.
So is this only on sewer and water projects, or is this on,
Anything.
I mean, if, let's say, hypothetically, the arena, something would happen to it and we have to redo something there, we could roll that into this, using
Use
this?
the same process authorized in this resolution, yeah. Marty could identify it as something the council needed to spend cash on, wanted to preserve the ability to replenish that cash by financing it with a tax exempt bond. This lays out the ability and the procedure for Marty to do that, document it, put it in the file, and it keeps those options open. So it just allows you to do the way business logically would be done and still comply with the IRS regs.
Anybody else have any questions? Is this something that we would like to go with?
What happens if that 2018 or 16 project doesn't go?
This is a, not best efforts, reasonable expectations kind of a thing, okay?
Yeah.
If it turns out it doesn't go and you decide to leave that cash investment as the permanent funding source, no harm, no foul. Okay? If you have a reasonable expectation of wanting to reimburse your cash expenditure, you apply this resolution. Doesn't bind you to do it, but it keeps your options open.
That's the biggest thing. If it doesn't, you can't be penalized if something else doesn't happen.
That's right.
Well, I guess it's a win-win. If we apply for it, we're eligible. If we don't apply for it, we are definitely gonna lose because we're gonna need that. So with that, I make a motion to approve it.
Josh?
I got one question, I guess. Is this, so like, you get to go through this resolution every time you plan for it? Like this is for our 2018 project then?
This resolution would give your administrator, if you pass that resolution, it lays out a process granting Marty the ability, when he sees a situation like this happening, to take that third page, write it down, document it, and put it in the file and keep your options open. So it doesn't mean that every one of these has to come back to the council to pass this resolution again. This lays out the procedure for your administrator to do the necessary documentation.
Okay.
We have a motion for resolution 182-15.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
All right.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, David,
Thanks,
again.
David.
All right, we'll keep in
Drive
touch.
safe.
Bye.
Yep.
All right. Moving on for this evening. Public hearing for 19864 2nd Street Northeast and 19822 2nd Street Northeast, voluntary annexation. At this time, I'll open the public hearing, or public comment session.
Mr. Mayor and Council, do you have the ordinance in front of you? I included in the packet, right? Matt, you want to go ahead and take care of it? Thanks.
Sure, so this is an annexation ordinance that was triggered under 414.033 subdivision 23. This is an annexation by petition, which essentially allows the city to annex property by ordinance when that property is less than 120 acres. They are not presently served by public water facilities or wastewater. They receive a petition from all of the property owners within the subject area. At that point, the city is required to serve notice on the town board in the township in which the property is currently located, which was done, I think it's laid out in here when notice was served on the Munson Township Board. And then step 2 of the process is to have a public hearing, which we're currently in the process of doing, at which point the ordinance can be adopted and the land can be annexed. And so here we're dealing with 2 properties And we have unanimous consent from the landowners of those two parcels, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
In particular attention, under the now therefore, item number 6 is what you approved at your last council meeting, so that you're aware of it.
Is there any other comments? Anybody on the council have comment? Is there any other comments for the public hearing this evening? And is there any other comments? If hearing no comments, at this time I will close the public hearing. Consideration of ordinance 2015-104 annexing the land at the two addresses on 2nd Street Northeast.
Mr. Mayor and Marty, would this be effective then January 1, 2016?
No, it's effective once the administrative law judge,
Okay, is it in
Signs
cities?
off on it.
yeah.
Okay, so basically, we'll be losing next year's taxes.
We will not get 2016's taxes, that's true.
And then it's 2017 and 2018 that it will be a portion.
These, yes, 20% per year starts in 2017, it's collectible.
Because of the timetable.
Yeah. We've got until, anything that's not annexed, we have until August 1st to get it done. If it's not done by August 1st, then it goes into the next preceding next year.
So, I guess question, is this, the back page of the ordinance, is that actually wrong then? Because it says that this township would be reimbursed 2016 year's tax.
That's the year we're using for reimbursement.
Okay. But then would it be paid in 2016, 17 or 2017, 18? 'Cause then, I mean, you're not,
It doesn't matter. It just, the state statute says over 2 years.
okay. Check.
Does that clarify your question, Pat?
Yes.
I'll make the motion for ordinance 2104.
Second it.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Is there anything else we need to add for that?
Nope. This point, Marty would file it with the municipal boundary adjustment, the Board of Municipal Boundary Adjustments for review and approval.
Okay. So you have everything you need then?
Yes.
All right, at this time we'll move on. Is Kevin out?
Kevin had to go to the arena real quick and be
Okay.
right back.
We'll move on to Public Works, and then we'll come back to Kevin when he's back. Gordy?
Good evening, gentlemen. First snowfall. We went out plowing. Started about 3:30 the other morning, finished up about 9:30. And then I worked on the truck a little bit. Garrican started hauling last night about 9:30 last night, and we finished up about midnight. Worked out pretty good. The compost is officially closed for the year. We did pull the dumpsters out of there and moved the steps into the bunkers, got that little cleaned up. So I've been locking the gate when I leave work at night, so it'll be locked up now. Open during the days when I'm there, but if I'm not there or weekends, whatever, it's gonna be locked up. I'm asking people, you know, this is the season again where people are blowing snow and stuff, not to blow their snow up onto the roads. What happens is if I go and clean the road off and they blow that stuff on the roads, it actually gets hard, and it's hard to get through that. So I'm just asking people not to do that. The project, the Garrican project over near the end of town, that's a pretty big dig, and a lot of people are asking what's kind of taking a little bit over there, but it's a deep dig. It's 17 feet down is what they're doing. They have almost all the sewer lines in, and right after they're done with that, the subcut is still there yet, and then they're going to go ahead and lay water line. So I'm assuming the water line will be done next week. Lights over Nature. I had to get a whole Stearns Electric. They got here today. We have underground wiring problems over there. We just learned of it as I left work today. If that's the case, they have to come through the alley and they have to run a new wire up to that street light, which also feeds one of our Christmas lights. So I told them as whenever they can get to it, that's fine. So we're gonna have one intersection over by the park. That intersection is gonna be dark for a little bit until they can get that put in.
Okay.
And then the only thing I got left is Friday night. We have that tremendous night out where we're going to be closing some streets up and detouring some traffic and doing a little parade in town. So I'll be putting up those barricades. I think everybody's got a little to-do list here, so, but we'll be barricading that off and doing a little detour up there, so that's kind of like what's going on there.
Gordy, on those barricades, are you gonna have the flashy lights on them? I know last year there was comments made that people couldn't see them when they
Right.
came in.
Right.
The city does not own flashing lights. I can ask the county to see if they can get some, or if we can get some from, or borrow some from them. But I can look to see if we can find something for flashing lights. I do have to put up detour signs. The county wants us to do detours, so I suppose it's gonna be a new thing, even with the River Lake Day parades and stuff, to put detour signs up now, because that's what they're asking to do. So we'll have to put some type of a detour sign up. At that time, I'll ask them if they have some blinky lights we can put out there. But we don't own any blinky lights.
Okay. I just remember that was one of the comments from last year.
Yep. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it's,
I think that was even in regards to the Oktoberfest one
Right,
too.
the Oktoberfest one, we got the
Hard to see.
And that was, it was hard to see. There wasn't enough of reflection on any of the barricades.
And maybe, Gordy, maybe that's something maybe you need to find out some prices on some and see.
oh, we could,
I mean,
just that we just
If we're
never,
gonna need some for a few events, maybe that's something we need to own eventually. So,
oh, okay.
thank you.
So that's kind of what was all going on. Did a lot of stuff in the shop, preparing. We did the sandblasting, we did painting the truck and got that all ready to go, so that's up and running. I still have to put a cutting edge on the big blower for the skid loader. I got to replace that yet. And then, of course, the emergency management vehicle. I pulled that into the shop today and we stripped that down from our light bars and stuff like that, so that's ready for sale. So that's kind of what's going on. So that's all I have.
Were the vehicles that were plowed around, were they reported to law enforcement?
I did not report any of them. I know that there's one on Main Street where the county went around it. I didn't report that. There's one other one that's over on First Street that I had gone around, and I didn't report that one. But that was the only two that we had this time.
Just that the citizens are aware, there is significant snowfall, there is no parking on the street due to that, and they're eligible to a ticket and very possibly a tow.
Right.
Good point.
Yeah. Get off the streets.
Anybody else have any other comments?
With that, the Maple extension, are we gonna run into any trouble with the frost getting in there and freezing any other lines?
No.
Okay.
Our stuff is covered. When they make that exposure to our water line and stuff, it'll be an exposure, and then they're gonna put the valve in, and then they'll cover it right back up again.
Okay.
And that line won't be charged until after it makes its test. It's got to have air on it and do all that decontaminations and stuff like that. So we can't do nothing with it until it's tested out.
Okay.
So yeah, it'll be okay.
Anybody else have any questions for Gordy? Thanks, Gordy.
Thanks.
Gordy.
Being Kevin's not here, we'll just move on for now. If he comes back, we'll go back to the Parks and Arena. We'll move on to council report. Start with EDA, Mike and Pat.
We had an EDA meeting this past month. A lot of different things were discussed. The BR&E, business retention type thing, and the projects that they have come up with were discussed. We just wanted more reports on them to find out what kind of timetable they had. They have definitely some interesting projects going, from the trail to different housing and different businesses. So as that progresses further, we will be giving more of a report on that. We also, the day after the EDA meeting, received a resignation from an individual that's on the EDA board, and we will be looking at that at this month's meeting, how to replace and when to replace that individual. if it would be advertising or whatever.
That's this body's job, so
But we'll bring in some suggestions, hopefully.
it isn't necessary, but it's the council that appoints EDA.
Okay. So basically, we're working on what we got going, kind of finishing up from the year. So, that's it.
Is there any tentative date of
It
A&W?
depends on, there's an item on the fire for the planning and zoning about a public hearing at the county. If they come back with some information that we might want to support that, we'll have a meeting before the 18th.
For the 15th.
Before the 18th.
Right, but I think we scheduled it for the 15th
15th,
tentatively.
We'll find out how that goes in the
Here-
next few
Here at
days.
6:30, so.
All right. Anything else for the EDA? Nope. Thank you. Moving on to Planning Commission, Josh?
We had our meeting Tuesday, November 24th. Only 2 items were brought up. The one was already discussed by Gordy, was the Maple Sewer and Water Extension. We just discussed how that was progressing. The other thing we brought up was a Stearns County Solar Garden application for the Rambler Farm just north of town.
9 o'clock.
We just discussed amongst ourselves, the planning commission, how we felt that affected our conditional or comprehensive plan. And we just decided to have Cynthia Strack, I believe, right, made a letter that each of you received. Just discussing how we felt that it interfered with our plans for residential zoning up there and our future use of the land. And the meeting for the Stearns County is December 17th at the Stearns County building. And if we send the letter in, we'll probably trying to have at least one of our members attend. So
Matthew will address any concerns or questions you have regarding Cynthia's letter if you'd like him to.
I don't know if anyone does. I read through it this morning, and it's pretty straightforward. She does a good job of kind of laying out what this area is and what it's currently zoned and identified as at the county level. It's agricultural property, and she notes that a solar farm is a permitted conditional use on ag property, provided, of course, you meet the conditions of that permit. She then does raise the, concerns that the city of Richmond would have with this, like you're saying, it would possibly disrupt the comp plan for any sort of expansion or anything like that the city of Richmond might have. And she also does raise a bunch of conditions that if they do approve the permit, that she would hope they would include with that approval these conditions, such as requiring them to put together a decommissioning reclamation plan, meaning when the solar plant is no longer functioning or available, how they'll go about deconstructing it. She'd want them to require the company post a bond to pay for any damage or issues that the solar park might have. They ask that they reconsider what apparently is going to be the access to this solar plant, that being Dutch Avenue Northwest, and sort of other thing, relocation of these interconnection points, which apparently are going to be close to the city limits, and so just a lot of stuff that she would hope that on December 17th, is this the planning and zoning part, or is this the environmental part? And so then from there it would go recommendation to the commissioners to actually approve the conditional use permit. So she hopes they'll take all of this into consideration at December 17th, and any sort of recommendation that the environmental board might have for approval would include these conditions that she lays out in this letter, which, I personally don't know your feelings about it, but it sounds like there's some opposition, not just with the council, but just people living in the area at large towards the solar farm. And so, what goes on at the December 17th hearing, if there's enough opposition voiced, I don't know what the likelihood of them getting the permit is or isn't, but I guess this letter would help in, making sure that if it is granted, it's going to be controlled, and certain conditions are going to be put in place to protect the city of Richmond and the surrounding property owners.
And then
At this point, before you move on to your other agenda, it'd be nice to get a consensus from the council. Do you want this letter sent to the county?
I do have a question. Is there anything mentioned in here about this as part of our water? If you look at our
It's in our Duisma. She's not part of that, but I talked to Dave, who's part of the Minnesota Rural Water Association. He didn't feel there was a concern.
And she did make clear, from what I saw in the email to Marty, that if this is a draft, and if, if the city wanted to include things or anything like that into the letter, that it certainly can be.
I just feel from what I've talked to people this past weekend, and I asked if people even knew this was happening or that there was a potential, and I have yet to find somebody in town here other than the council that knows this is even coming. I mean, there's nothing, you don't hear nothing out in the public. I mean, unless you read the paper and see something in there, most people don't even know that a solar farm is coming.
Potentially coming.
Potentially coming.
Planned. Potentially planned.
So, I guess what is our thoughts? Are we willing to send this letter forward, or does somebody feel that needs to be changed, or?
No, I think, go ahead, Josh.
No, I feel it should be sent, and that was kind of what I got the feeling from the planning commission was also that we should send a letter, because it was our recommendation to make the letter, so.
And there's nothing off base, and it's not overly aggressive or anything. It's pretty on point, and I think.
Just one question, Matt. If this does get put in and it from agriculture gets used for commercial usage, does that mean there's commercial taxes then on it? Does it generate commercial taxes? Even because it's a permit? That's, I guess, my question.
It's not gonna change the zoning at all. It's still gonna be zoned the A40. In the way the Stearns County ordinance is written, a solar farm is permitted on A40 property, assuming you qualify the conditions to get the permit. So I don't think that, it's not gonna change the zoning classification, so I don't think the taxes are gonna change.
But according to her letter too, it says it's being used for industrial. So I'm just wondering if that means if somebody has a A40 piece of property and has an industry there, he just has to pay agriculture taxes?
He's getting cash rent. He hasn't changed what he's doing.
But the use of the property is.
Yeah, I see that. But if Matt's right, they're not gonna rezone it. He's a farmer getting cash rent for his land.
Yeah, it's not gonna be rezoned. I think any reference to industrial use here is maybe just industrial type use, not that this has to be rezoned as industrial and therefore it's going to be considered
There's a
industrial.
lot of questions. There's
Yeah.
a lot of gray area with these things so far. So I agree with Mr. Worm that we should send this letter in support of the city kind of watching over itself. What could happen. Watching over the area of the people in the northwest corner of the city. Now at the EDA level, and Mike can correct me if I'm wrong, we decided when a letter did come out that we would call an emergency meeting to find out where the Economic Development Authority felt on this, and similar to find out what the planning and zoning felt about this.
Right.
And then put those letterheads with it or without it, to this. If it would help one way or the other.
I think she did a phenomenal job of expressing the city's opinion as the city planner.
And it's generally what Pat said too, the planning commission plans on holding an extra meeting to address the letter too,
If necessary.
if necessary.
So from what I'm hearing, everybody feels that we should send this letter, and like Pat expressed in concern for all the residents that live on, in the city of Richmond.
The west half of Dutch Avenue. With that, Mr. Mayor, would you like a motion on this or just the action of?
You can, either way, consensus
names.
is fine or a motion. But before you do that, Gordy, Dutch Avenue, the eastern side of it, is township.
Correct.
Who had that question? You, Matt?
I had that question. Well, she does outline in the letter that she labels Dutch Avenue as a municipal street, and that apparently has been identified as the primary access of this project, and that obviously being something the city would be concerned about if, this is going to be the main route for access to the solar farm, that's a city street, we'd have concerns with that. But is it just half the street that's township and half that's,
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not inaccurate, it is, at least half of it's a city street.
The solar garden, the way I understand it, is going to be running parallel with Dutch Avenue. It'll be along that street.
Okay.
It won't be behind school or won't be, it's gonna be right alongside it.
Kind of on the north half of the property.
On the northern half of the property.
According to the drawings,
Yeah.
there's a cemetery.
450 feet north of the cemetery, it starts.
So under consensus, we're gonna send this letter to the county in, outlining where the city stands at it. So
Did you decide did you want to go with me to this meeting?
I can,
And then if there is one more on planning commission, Josh, I'll talk with you and the other members, see if you're interested in going, otherwise the mayor can speak for the council too.
all right?
Is that Wednesday or Thursday?
Thursday.
Is it night or day? I think they're day meetings.
Day meeting. Doesn't it say right on that letter right
It
there?
doesn't. That just gives me the deadline when I have to have the letter to them.
Okay. So the consensus will send the letter, and then the EDA and the planning commission can do if they wanna put their letterhead on top of it, that's fine. Anything else, Josh, for the planning commission?
Unless we have a special meeting, our next meeting is scheduled for January 28th at 6.
Anybody have any questions for Josh? No. All right, we'll move on to Ricori Trail Phase 2. Tomorrow's meeting is at 9 o'clock in Rockville. Kevin, you have a small report on that?
Yeah. Take it out of my regular report.
And then once you're done with that, we'll go back and let you complete your parks.
Okay, so I'll start at the bottom and then work my way
Sure.
back to the top.
Works for me.
Ricori Trails right now, like I reported at the last meeting, the appraisal is completed. The railroad now has it in their hands, so we're waiting to begin negotiations. And Adam Ripple is kind of the lead on that process. I would assume that after the first of the year, it'll begin in earnest. And SEH is working on final design. There is some surveying work being done out there, and also some soil borings that are happening at this time. They're being performed. We have a bonding request in St. Paul at this time for the next bonding bill, and then we are applying for funds from the Federal Enhancement Program, TAP. So those are the things that are happening. We're looking at corridor, we're looking at money, and trying to make all that happen. And like Jim said, our next meeting is tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock at Rockville City Hall. Any questions on the Ricori Trail? Everyone? Yeah.
Just not on that segment. How did we ever turn out with the quarter mile or half mile in between Richmond and Cold Spring and the Bend? Some people knew it as across from the Winter Farm. That was buckling and different things. Whatever happened to that?
Well, what we wound up doing was we cut out about a 2-foot section right out of the middle of the trail and put in new fill and a patch. And lo and behold, last spring, not an issue. I think we had the initial settling of the trail had completed, and then the repair was proper. We had no cracking through that area at all this spring or early summer, which is when we saw it originally. So
Was that about 700 feet long? Do you remember?
yeah, something like that. And none of it was out of our pocket. The contractor paid a portion of it, and SEH paid the remainder. So none of that repair came out of the Ricori Trail funds.
Any other questions on Ricori Trail?
You guys know where we're going on this second phase? Right behind Keese, all the way through to behind Schaefer Electric Motor Repair in Rockville. At which point it will dip down off of the railroad corridor, and it'll jump on Main Street through Rockville. There's already a portion of trail built through Rockville. So. Okay. All right. Then we'll go to regular report here. Get all David's stuff out of the way. He had a lot of numbers. Arena. Right now, I mean, we're operating really smoothly. The staff is settled in. The new staff is settled in well, and we're really busy this time of the year. I've just completed the last of the ice scheduling for the season with St. John's in their intramural league, and then the broomball league, which both of those start up January. So at that point, we're at our clients or our tenants' capacity. We've got everybody rocking at that time. This weekend we'll host our second youth tournament of the season so far. First one went off great. This one should be as great. We got teams coming from Faribault, Virginia, Fargo, Litchfield, and then us. So we got some teams coming from all over the place. And then plus this week we've had last night we had a girls high school series, and then tomorrow night we have a girls high school series. So we're going pretty full bore right now. Concessions have been going really well. It seems to me like over the counter's a little bit up from last year. Won't know that until we do our year-end stuff, but it just appears like we're running product and doing more deposits. So we'll have a good read on that at the end of the year. The open ice sessions, the open hockey, and the open skating have been really well attended. I always struggle with Wednesday nights, so I filled it with some open hockey stuff until broomball kicks in, and we're getting 20, 25 guys for open hockey on a Wednesday night, so that's really nice. At $5 a guy, that's a pretty good deal. Right now, there's no mechanical problems to deal with down at the arena. Keeping fingers crossed, knocking on wood, anything I can to keep superstitions alive, and just normal maintenance. When we hit our busy time, our biggest maintenance is just cleaning. I mean, going in, cleaning out locker rooms, bleachers, lobby. When I talk about maintenance, that's what I'm talking about: pine sol and mops and brooms. So. That's our biggest maintenance issue right now. Zamboni's doing really well, but this summer we will have to schedule some maintenance to it. Bearings in the augers, our fuel regulators. We changed those 3 years ago, so we'll need to change out the fuel regulators. So some things just to keep the big guy up and operating properly. One of the things that's really fun this year is we have seen participation growth. The participation in our two main youth activities have seen growth this year at the younger levels. Both figure skating and youth hockey saw about 20% growth in their youngest levels, and that's not happening everywhere, but for some reason they did a really good job of recruitment and promotion, and kids came out in droves. I'm kind of in charge of that little group, and I have to order 20 new jerseys because we've just grown out of our jerseys. Major events for December, we've got 5 high school game nights. We have 2 youth hockey tournaments. We have a Christmas figure skating show. There's 17 youth hockey games, and then a lot of holiday open ice sessions, because when school's closed we do more open ice, open hockey, open skating when school's out, and then just a lot of practices. So we're good at all those games and figure skating shows and everything else. We got to practice.
Kevin,
yeah.
If people want to see that, they can go on the city's website.
Right, and I'm going to give that next, right here. The public can find all the events that we have down there, the big events. I mean, we don't list practices on the city's website, or youth games, but we'll list all of our high school games, figure skating shows, open ice sessions, and they can go to the city's website, visit the Parks Department, or they can go to River Lakes Hockey and visit their calendar. So we're on a couple of different sites. And then we're also in the Cold Spring Record community events calendar for all of our open ice and stuff. Obviously, the parks are pretty much closed right now. The Trail Pavilion is still open, and we're keeping that maintained and cleaned and open and operating. Hopefully we get more snow, so snowmobilers start running through town and stop and use that facility. Now that the weather has turned, everybody's asking when the outside skating rink is going to be up and running. Very normal, but it's too early yet. Obviously, snow is melting, so we can't put ice out now. What we'll normally do is we won't even think about starting that outside ice until we start hitting the sub-zero range at night, and we need to stay below freezing or 32 during the day. Otherwise, the sun will beat it down, and we'll just be wasting our time and money, pumping water out there that evaporates and melts away. That's no good for anyone. So once we hit -0 and we stay below 32, we'll get out there and get 3-4 inches of water, ice down, and start skating outside. The normal rink hours, once we're up and running, will be weekdays 4 to 9 p.m. and weekends 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. That's pretty standard for quite a few years. The the Arts and Music group will start meeting after the first of the year to begin scheduling next summer's music in the park concerts. One of the things that we did last year, we had a lot of value to our concerts last year. I mean, the stuff we did with the Centennial, the 125th anniversary, partnershiping with Battered Women's Shelter, some food drives and things like that. That was all added value that we put to the event. We want to continue to do that, so we're going to look at ways to continue enhancing the program and the appeal of the program. So, but that'll wait until 2016, and that's not too far away. So that's all I have. Any questions, Council, Mayor?
Are you able to stay? Are you?
No, I got
Mike?
Just a quick question, just mentioned to the public, you had a fairly big trailer outside the back of the arena, and I think there was it kind of in question a little bit. People did not know what that was at all. Could you kind of explain to people what that actually was? So
the boys high school program put together a locker room workout area. It's a big trailer. And in it, they've got workout stations, shooting area, and then a locker room area as well that they use game day. Okay. So basically, they dress out there for their games. They come in that door and then enter the ice from that end of the ice. Yeah, I didn't think it was going to be that big when he brought it up last spring. And I brought it up to Marty and I said, yeah, it looks like the high school's going to bring in a trailer to do some training. And then it's a beast. It's not here right now. It will travel with the boys' high school team. It's in Painesville now. Now they're back practicing here next week, so they'll come. The trailer will be back on a weekly basis.
Okay.
This was in Heidi's packet for tomorrow, and so I'm going to ask council later on the agenda to address it. Do you feel comfortable to review it? It's a letter of support for.
Yeah. So basically what Marty handed, this is Ricori Trail related. It's a letter of support, I hate to be redundant, supporting our request for transportation alternative funds. And it just basically states that, Richmond is in favor of us applying and seeking out those monies. So when it comes up later on.
That'll be brought up later on in council action.
Yeah. So we're not asking for anything other than just a letter of support saying, go get some money, guys.
Anybody else got any questions for Kevin on the parks?
Parks, arena,
anything?
Nope.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, guys.
Move on to Tri-City Cable. Next meeting is January 6th at Ricori. Josh, is there anything other than what you brought up last month? Nope. All right. Then we'll move on to the Mayor's Breakfast. I had the Mayor's Breakfast in St. Cloud at the Kelly Inn on November 19th. There was 12 area mayors from the Stearns County area. Our featured speaker this year was David Wheaton, who is a former professional tennis player. Well, he kind of still is a professional tennis player. And his theme this year was how sports and life come together as you get older. It was kind of a neat story how he brought it up that he used to be all about sports, and as he's gotten older, he's understanding, how life and sports kind of run hand in hand. So That's all I have from the breakfast. Moving on to council action for tonight. We do have one council action. It's the 2015 year-end journal entries.
I put this on your council table. I put it together today. I apologize. Normally I think I get this to a little bit earlier to review it. All of these transactions are approved throughout the year by council. And so on the far right, I put a little memory words in there to help you remember what the increase was for the majority of the increase. The one on the fire for medical supplies, I put down monitor. That was a blood pressure monitor, right?
Yes.
Okay. Otherwise, all this is in order in preparation for the audit is to get our budget to equal what the council action was during the year.
And is this everything we paid out extra?
Yes, in those line items. Towards the bottom, you'll notice we had reductions. You see on the far right, it says sent to item 23 and 24 is PFA Main Street debt service. That fund 317 is now, we're using 601 for the auditor's request. It only took them 8 years to get me to go along with it. So we didn't save any money, it's just that those expenses are now paid out of 601, the water fund.
Anybody have any questions? Do you want us to?
That would be action item. I have nothing other than the journal entries on that.
If there's no other questions, I'll move this.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item B is resolution 184-15. It's that letter of support for the Ricori Trail to send it to the transportation alternative project for getting money.
Make a motion to.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Other matters of concern for this evening, voluntary annexation public hearing for February 4th. Are we still on for that?
Yes, we have two property owners who, a couple weeks ago that you're aware of, that requested annexation, so that's the timeline for that next public hearing.
And 2016, not 15.
Oh, good catch.
All right. Addressing properties being annexed.
I'm not sure if I've talked with all of you, but once we get these properties annexed in, did we talk about this already?
The workshop was briefly
Right.
brought out.
And
Brought out,
I'm not
yeah.
asking for action tonight, but we will need council direction on what you want to do. Are we going to put these properties in line with our other city properties? I think Pat might have more of a stronger opinion on it, but I would ask you to consider that the south side addition, when we brought them in, those properties on Hall Avenue maintain their 5-digit township number. We did not require them to change, and I don't know why.
And possibly anything outdoors. Might still have a 5-digit one.
Probably Josh,
Anything outdoors.
over on south side of 23.
The photo building and the right next to Lake River.
Eric,
Well, that's not in the city.
Yeah, it is.
The old Tice.
it's what?
That's not in the city.
Yes,
Yeah,
it is.
They're in.
That's
now.
one.
2009,
9.
9, 10.
10.
Yeah,
8 or 9, somewhere in there.
they're in.
So if we make one change, do we make them all change? Do we just not make them change?
Well, I'm just looking at it too with tonight, and the things that the county has to be changed too when this all gets done, because the ambulance and fire and police will all be changed in their computer systems. And if this is all going to be standardized for all emergency vehicles and, whatever, now is the time to do it, but, it's not only just a change of a driver's license. It's everything from billing to taxes to everything.
everything.
So I think a lot further discussion should be made on that.
All right. moving on, MnDOT Highway 23 meeting, December 10th, 2 PM at City Hall. There's a little flyer on your,
That's a different meeting, and Cindy put that there, thinking you might wanna, that's the public hearing one,
public open house.
public open house.
And then the other meeting, the public open house, is Tuesday, December 15th. That'll be located at St. Peter and Paul Church. And just give you it's from 4 PM to 6:30 PM.
Is that similar to the one that they already had?
Right, just seeking information and input for the primary design. So,
Okay.
more or less, those are information. Is there any other items anybody has for this evening?
Tremendous.
Yeah, just remember that, yeah, go ahead.
This coming Friday night, Tremendous Day in Richmond, or Tremendous Night. I think at 5 o'clock, there'll be hot dogs being served. There'll be a lot of other events that are going on through the Main Street corridor. Everything from a tree lighting to ending at, kind of coming to an end at 7 o'clock with the parade down Main Street of fish houses. I believe there's a few different businesses that are running little things inside their own. There's Santa, there's
Sleigh rides, reindeer.
so from
Caroling.
5 o'clock on, what time is the streets being closed?
I think it'll be 4:30 is on.
About 4:30, okay. So anytime after 4:30, the street will be closed. There'll be,
Hot dogs and beverages will be 5 until whenever out.
yeah,
5 to 7 are out.
Yeah, so.
so welcome everybody to come out.
Yes.
Hopefully we get a semi-warm evening.
It's supposed to
no
be
snow.
nice. It's supposed to be nice.
There'll also be there'll be some campfires on the street, I believe, again, 1 or 2. So,
I don't know.
anybody else have anything to add? Hearing
No.
nothing, meeting's adjourned.